So it's been a while. Honestly, I just haven't really had the energy to make videos or really to read, but I'm done with my second year of uni. So hopefully now I can get back into reading a bit more. I did, however, have a lot of time over Easter. So I read like three books, mainly because I had nothing else to do. And they all kind of had like the same theme, not on purpose, and that was horrible men. American Psycho was the first book I finished. I ended up audiobooking it and was like listening to it on the walks that I did because I live in the countryside. So there are a lot of like just really pretty fields that are you can wander around for like completely free. So I was walking a lot and I was listening to this on like my walks. I did really enjoy this book at the start. I read American Psycho over like the course of a year. I took pretty big gaps in between reading it. But yeah, I liked at the start. I liked what it had to say about these men that thought so highly of themselves because they're in like a different tax bracket. And it's interesting kind of how the fear of AIDS was so blatant in this book, and how it was kind of left out of the movie, which I think is really, really interesting. It felt so personal from Ellis, the author, who is a gay man. I believe we're certainly attracted to men and was in the 80s. So it all feels very, very personal. And like this is something that Ellis himself has seen. And because of that, it was a really interesting angle of the book that I didn't expect to happen. I didn't know that it would be such a strong part of the start of this book. Also, all of the characters confusing like each other it was like a really interesting touch because Ellis is obviously trying to drive home the point that these men are nothing special, even though like almost they're like desperately trying to be. Like they're trying to make themselves feel more special than they actually are and feel like they have a bigger role than they actually do. And by going to all of these really expensive clubs and restaurants and wearing all of these clothes, it's such like an interesting commentary on how the upper class view people of high status, as in like whereas people of like a lower class might value personality more, these men, all they care about is appearance and appearing like they are more important than they actually are. So there is a lot to like in this book, I will give it that. But the violence spiked at a point in a way that I just simply was not fucking with. For a while, I was, kind of thinking that the amount of violence that was happening towards women was supposed to make you feel almost bored. Like it was supposed to desensitize you in the way that kind of you could comment that society has become desensitized towards women. Violence towards women is not considered shocking anymore. And I think if the book was trying to do that, then it definitely achieved that. You get to a certain point where all of the violence kind of feels like the same and it all blurs into one and becomes almost boring in the way that it is boring to hear Patrick Bateman talk about the clothes that people are wearing. And for that, I will give it credit. It does desensitize you. But there is just one scene that felt so grim that it made me look at the rest of the book in a less generous way. Like it just hit a point where like I stopped walking. I stopped walking and I was like, what was that about? Like, what was that for? And it made me look at the book like a lot less kinder. Also, I just do not remember how this book ends. Um, so I think I only gave it 3 stars because there is stuff in here that is really interesting, especially if you are reading Patrick Bateman as a gay man, like how almost this hatred of himself has now come out as a hatred of women and their bodies, and the way that he talks about women is very mechanical in a way. Like it's very it doesn't read like someone who is attracted to women, like the way that he talks about them. And there's also a YouTube video that dives into this topic somewhere. I'll put it up on screen or I'll link it below. That I will definitely give a watch to at some point. But yeah, I just think overall, film's better than the book. I feel like the film just improved on the book in every foreseeable way. So yeah, I would recommend the film, but I definitely wouldn't recommend this book, especially if you are sensitive to violence. I don't think there's any point in reading this book at all. Like I said, there are plenty of YouTube videos on this book, so if you are interested in the topics that this book kind of dives into, just watch them. I don't really think the book's worth it. On a completely different note, I read the book Itch by Gemma Moore, and I really liked it. I really enjoyed this book. It was very slow and heavy at the start because it's about an abuse survivor called Josie that is moving back to a small town after her girlfriend essentially just threw a brick at her head. Um, and her town is one that is filled with old folklore and tradition, with something called the Devil's March being the center of this story. So the story starts with Josie walking through the woods where the Devil March has just happened. It's this parade that moves through the town, and she discovers a dead body infested with ants. This kind of begins Josie's compulsive belief that she's filled with ants and that in some way they are controlling her actions. This story does turn into a murder mystery almost, but it's a very good one and it's done well. And I love how the author wrapped old folklore into the story. By the end of the story, I loved the characters that we followed. Josie is really well written. There is also a stubborn old man with a wealth of knowledge that everyone dismisses, and those sorts of characters I just adore. I really like them. And a scary lady that runs a pub, who I also really liked, and I really like that trope. I would really recommend this book. It was released either late last year or early this year. It made my skin crawl in the best way, and every time I think about it, I love it even more. Overall, this is probably my favorite book at the moment that falls within the folk horror genre, which is a genre that I want to read more, and you will definitely see me reading more of. The final book I read over Easter was Diary of an Oxygen Thief, whose author is anonymous. Kept on seeing this cover everywhere, and it literally would not leave me alone, but I didn't want to spend like a tenner on a book that was less than, 200 pages long. But then it showed up in a charity shop for a quid, so I just grabbed it. I did enjoy this book. I don't know whether to say that this book is plot heavy, because a lot of stuff certainly happened, but it's all very simple, so I don't remember a ton of it. It was just really interesting to be in this man's mind as he gets what he views as a downfall, and like the he views part of that is very important. Like, this book is about a selfish and self-deprecating man that one day just decides to start hurting women, seemingly because he can and because he's bored. Then about halfway through the book, he meets a woman that he becomes obsessed with, but she treats him in the way that he has treated the women in his life. And I think this book is an interesting character study on this specific type of horrible man. But if in a book you need someone to get what they deserve, I don't think this is the book for you. There is a moment where he feels like he's gotten what he deserved, but it didn't feel like that to me as a reader, which I find really interesting. Like, I don't view as a criticism of the book at all. If anything, I think it plays into his character and tells you more about his character. It's like he's so out of touch with himself and with reality, where the like massively horrible things that are happening to him aren't that big of a deal to us as a reader. I actually do really think it's an interesting take on obsessive love, and I would recommend this one. Again, it is about an abusive man, but in a way where he's so pathetic that I don't necessarily think it requires a trigger warning. At the moment, I'm currently reading Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee by Dee Brown, which is just so incredibly informing. I did study Native American people and the colonization of them at GCSE, but it was mainly taught from the perspective of the white settlers. My teacher never held back on the details, and looking back and like talking to other people's experience of history, it really made me respect this teacher a lot more. But obviously, studying colonization from the perspective of the colonizers leads a lot of gaps in knowledge. And this book is the telling of that history from the perspective of multiple Native American tribes. I haven't finished it yet, but it's really getting me back into history, which is fun for me and definitely won't get annoying for my friends. I would highly recommend this book because even though it's nonfiction, I don't think it's intimidating in any way. And in fact, I think it tells history really well by telling it through stories, through certain battles and certain movements and achievements and setbacks and things like that, that make it easy to read because it's written in more of a story than it is through like a textbook. I would highly recommend this even if you don't read a lot of nonfiction. I'm also reading Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. It's a short story collection. I've read two of them so far, and I've really enjoyed like both of them. The Husband Stitch was a really good retelling of the Girl with the Green Ribbon, and the Inventory was also a really interesting story that I've never really kind of encountered before, like that way of writing. I would recommend this book even from the two short stories that I've read, and I'm really excited to continue to read more from her. And I've just realized that those last two books kind of carry on the theme of horrible men, so I'm clearly going with a theme this year. That's what I've been reading. I'm looking forward to reading more this summer. I want to tick off some massive books that I've got on my list, mainly so I don't have to keep on moving them back between where I live at uni and then where I live at home. Um, so, thank you for listening, and I hope you have a lovely day.